Majora's Mask, possibly the darkest game Nintendo has ever given the green light on, is something I've never experienced before. Its themes range from the stages of grief all the way to essentialism. I don't think I've ever seen a game so drastically different from its original counterpart. Just discussing the sheer tonal difference between Ocarina and Majora's Mask could be a video in its entirety. The game doesn't even have Zelda anywhere even mentioned. Everything about this game just infatuates me, from its development crunch and developer nightmares all to its perfection of its main gameplay mechanic. To give a little background on all this, I just want to state that this is my first fully finished Zelda game. I was a Mario kid growing up and I honestly still prefer it to Link & Co, but there is something just so different about this game. I remember seeing the trailers for the 3DS remake and being so intrigued by it. It was something I'd never seen before, such a dark game published by this kid company, as the masses would refer it to. Sadly, I wouldn't get my hands on it until I figured out this thing called Luma, but besides that, I finally played it and now we're here. So without further ado, my name is Angle, and this is the masterpiece of Majora's Mask. Time is the thesis of this game. Even when developing the game, the antagonist was time. After the overwhelming success from Ocarina, Nintendo came to the question of how to top such a standout experience. Director Iijime Amanuma stated that they were faced with a very difficult question of just what kind of game would follow Ocarina of Time and its worldwide sales of 7 million units. The answer to this was to blatantly reuse textures and to reuse the entire engine and to get it all done under a year. Crazily enough, it worked, and it worked well. Majora's Mask went to sell 3 million copies. Of course, it didn't reach the heights that its older brother achieved, but the game made an impact in the Zelda series and even in internet culture, of course referring to the infamous creepypasta of Ben Drowned. I just find so much of this game unique and outlandishly different than games I've experienced before. The game's story is a simple one. Link is looking for his fairy friend Navi and gets lost in the Lost Woods, and then gets ambushed by this weird looking thing called Skull Kid. Skull Kid jumps Link and he falls into this polar opposite of Hyrule, Termina. You meet up with the eerie Happy Mask salesman and are tasked with the goal of saving Termina before utter doomsday comes in the form of a moon lingering above you throughout your entire playthrough. I don't know about you, but that initial plot setup is so weird. Not weird in the sense of that one kid Naruto running throughout the hallways, but weird in the sense of it just immediately putting the player in this do-or-die situation right off the bat. And I absolutely love that about Majora. It makes everything feel so important. Every interaction doesn't feel wasted because of the fact you're trying to save these people. These genuine human beings who are just as terrified of looming death that the player probably is in real life, even if they deny it or not. Just the atmosphere right off the bat is just so well put that it just separates itself from other Zelda games in the series. For example, the game's entire gimmick is this 3-day cycle. This constant cycle of progression and regression, of doing side quests and attempting to beat the dungeon in one cycle is just so interesting to me. Majora's essential statement when it comes to gameplay is to achieve as much as possible with as little as time as possible. It adds a sense of dread and frustration while playing Majora's Mask, which I think such little games do to enhance the gameplay. But you might be asking, well Angle, aren't video games supposed to be fun and enjoyable? And yes, you are right about how you should be genuinely enjoying yourself when you play a game, but I also like to bring the factor of accomplishment and intentional frustration, which then enlightens that feeling of accomplishment. I like to bring another game to highlight this intentional frustration that adds to the overall experience of the game. Jump King, notoriously known for its frustrating gameplay mechanics, but once beating it is so rewarding it brings a sense of achievement. A moment I had in Majora's Mask when I felt this sense of accomplishment through frustration was doing the sword upgrade side quest. When I first attempted to do the upgrade, I couldn't do it due to it being the 3rd day and them saying that due to the festival being tomorrow they won't do it. Because of that, I had to reset the cycle all over again, which meant I had to go beat the boss again, get the Gordon Keg again, do the Gordon race again. Then I had to pay up 100 rupees to get the first upgrade, wait a day, then further upgrade once again, all because I timed when I got the gold dust incorrectly. It may seem tedious and even sometimes padding for content, which I agree does happen, but it gives this huge feeling of accomplishment when you do what you sought out to do under the time limit. Each part of Termina is so vastly different from the other, and even if most of the characters come directly from Ocarina, they still feel different enough to pass as their own character. The game is divided up into 4 main dungeons: Woodfall Temple, Snowhead Temple, Great Bay Temple, Stone Tower Temple, which is a series low, but each dungeon is so well made that I truly believe it makes up for the lack of quantity. The game doesn't baby you either. I feel the puzzles are rewarding and hit the sweet spot of being too difficult and being simple enough to grasp. I enjoy Snowhead's puzzles a lot because it always made you interact with your environment. That made me feel like I was figuring it out instead of just being told what to do. which I find is a crucial mistake that some games make, the act of undermining the player and taking away this feeling of accomplishment that we went over earlier. As I said before, I played on the 3DS remake, so there are some major differences from the N64 release in this one, some good and some bad. Obviously, there is a Zora swimming speed change, which was a nuisance at times, but I don't think it was as horrible as people like to put it as, but definitely could have been improved upon. The Bomber's Notebook is completely revamped and is nice and organized and is simple to understand, which was not the case in the original. I didn't notice or mind most changes between the versions of games, but those were the two I personally found the biggest, regardless if positive or not. Another factor of this game that I like to shine light on is the side quests. I always felt like there was something to do besides the main quests, and I love that. Even if some of the quests were as boring as marching around with a bunch of chickens, or an action-packed firefight protecting Romani Ranch from aliens apparently, and trust me, some of these side quests are frustrating and quite frankly stupid, like the random maze in Clocktown. But then there are the more lackluster side quests that essentially boil down to fetch quests, which I personally never liked, and nor do I like the amount they put in this game. The other huge gameplay mechanic present in Majora is the masks. The masks can serve as a couple of things. Transformation masks are the most known, the transformations being the Deku Scrub, the Goron, the Zora, and the Fierce Deity, which you get after obtaining all 24 masks. The transformation masks serve as a story device and to also bundle items together, like the iron boots and the boomerangs being an all-in-one package with the Zora mask, while other masks like for example the bunny mask serve more as a standard item. And then there are masks specifically designed to certain quests, like the fairies mask, which its sole purpose is to attract stray fairies to you. I think that the main flaw of this gimmick is that there are too many masks that are underused, and I find disappointing considering how good a concept it is and how well they implement it with most of the masks. But for a majority of them, you're only going to be using them in very select scenarios. Overall, I found the gameplay engaging and constantly kept me thinking. Either it'd be to solve a puzzle or how to optimize my 3-day cycle, to do what I want to do in the time I had, or it'd be to remind myself to go back to Clocktown to a certain place and do a side quest. I was never bored playing this game. However, as we know, no game is a masterpiece without masterful art, and let me tell you, this game is filled to the brim with amazing art. Just Majora's style speaks volumes in how it's executed. If this is not Nintendo's darkest game, then it's certainly its most disturbing, and if you disagree with me, then have a gander over here and tell me that isn't remotely unsettling or disturbing. Watching the transformation cutscenes for the mask makes me so uneasy and uncomfortable, and that is great. The fact that a simple cutscene, no matter how many times it's played, can cause me, the player, to trigger a certain emotion without fail is something so special. It makes this game so thematic. It's supposed to over-exaggerate, but isn't exaggerated to the point where it's making a mockery out of itself. It just delivers itself so damn well, and I don't want to sound like a fanboy, but I just genuinely find this game so immersive and unique in how it conducts itself throughout its playthrough. Its storytelling and underlining themes are just another point of excellence that can't be dismissed when going over this game. Each temple containing someone who in their own way is already lost and calls on you to help. Either it be a monkey begging for you to help him prove his innocence towards a crime he didn't commit, or a pride-crushed warrior who sees his beloved home slowly crumble and cannot be at peace with himself. A vast ocean where a musician can only recognize his failures and shortcomings. And finally, the Valley of Death, where fallen soldiers fight towards a war that's ending so many years ago. And then there's Termina, a town full of naive and stubborn townsfolk, or rather people distancing themselves from the obvious problem in the sky, attempting to act stronger than what is present right in front of them. They all cling onto the player to help save them and to ultimately save himself from death. You can't possibly deny its storytelling excellence. Its art direction also hits the mark, each area being once again vastly different from the last, with every main area having its own atmosphere and place to explore and to interact with. Even if sometimes being a more linear path, there's always some secret to uncover. The game is one of the best looking on the 3DS, and when comparing it to the N64 to the 3DS version artistically, I still kind of prefer the 3DS one. Maybe it's because I'm biased towards it, but I really do think the 3DS looks better than the N64, even if the M64 has a charm of the older character models. I obviously find it more polished and such, but putting that aside, I adore the new textures and updated models. Like the moon, for example. The moon in the 3DS is heavily improved upon, even with the N64 being a little more creepier, which I think is debatable. The music, however, is up for no debate, and is like all Zelda music, just straight up magical. Even if Majora shares some tracks with Ocarina, its new tracks are phenomenal and add more heartthrob and tension to the game constantly, or more retrospective songs like Astro Observatory. There's a Clocktown theme which by everyday passage goes from this joyful tune to one of denial, then to one of panic, and to one that sounds like nothing like the rest. This eerie sound of nothing. The sound of acceptance is what I like to call it. The sound of accepting the impending doom coming. It's fitting that the title for the last version of Clocktown theme is named Final Hours. The fact that something as simple as the main hub's music has underlying themes and can be interpreted as so is just straight up impressive if I'm being frank. After restoring all 4 areas, you were led to the final task of defeating Majora itself. This fight is actually quite challenging without the proper upgrades, and I enjoyed the challenge a lot actually. Majora transforming and gaining limbs and turning into the personification of evil is also very disturbing, but once defeated, the moon crashing down Termina is destroyed and peace is restored. And a white screen appears with the words, "A dawn of a new day." In the end, Skull Kid gets redeemed and the happy mask salesman gets his mask back with none of the evil left inside of it. Link then leaves off into the distance and the festival of Termina starts as the credits roll and everyone is saved. You see everyone happy. The joyful tune being a rarity in the game plays. The Zora band all together again, the monkey and the Deku's dancing, everyone in Clocktown free of their worries and problems, the Great Fairy reunited again. It really is heartwarming to see these characters happy and just to live another day. Seeing Anju and Kefi's wedding just makes me smile when I see it. But then it cuts to one final scene. That one scene once again shows the absolute excellence of this game, and that is the scene of the Deku butler sobbing over his deceased son. If you hadn't noticed in the start of the game, while chasing Skull Kid, you see the same statue of the Deku, and probably go past it without a thought in mind. But while doing the Butler race side quest, he says that Link reminds him of his son that passed. Now putting these two together, we can come to the conclusion that the Deku mask you wear throughout the game is the Butler's son. And just seeing the scene right after being relieved that everyone was saved and happy, made me come to a realization of you can't save them all. No matter what you do, it is impossible to save everyone in Majora's Mask. The Deku Butler will still be sobbing over his son in the credits, and I think that's a valuable lesson this game entails, that sometimes it is impossible to save someone. After that scene, Link is shown again riding Epona through the woods, but this time, a light shining above him clearing the sky, and reveals a carving Skull Kid made of him and Link holding hands and being happy. Majora's Mask is a game I think everyone should at least try and play this game once. I think it's a fantastic journey that you'll enjoy. I appreciate this game because it's diverse gameplay and a wonderful presentation. And if you don't want to play it, I hope you can at least recognize the value the game has. As always, thank you for watching. I appreciate it more than you know.